Welcome to another episode of Monster Monday from the Ready to Die channel. This series explores the design of a creature I have built for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. The stat block for this creature can be found over on the Monster Monday blog, as well as the Twitter and Discord, all of which are linked below. Ladies, gentlemen, and the rest of yous palookas, I am back from my vacation. Here and happy to present to you another new monster. So, come check out the buzz on the Astalos, the Wyvern of Thunderous Rage. The overly aggressive Astalos was actually tested before I went on my sabbatical, and received high marks from my test subjects and some of the viewers, even though I haven't had the pleasure of facing this fearsome foe myself. This led to me outsourcing the determination of its level to the fantastic folks over on the Monster Monday Discord. Taking into account the other two members of the Fated 4 I've built, Glavinus at level 14 and Mizusune at level 12, we decided that the remaining two should be level 11 and 13. It was put to a vote, and poor Astalos got selected to be a level 11 creature, though it was fairly close. Given our flyer's physiology, the 2 wings, 2 legs, draconic nature, I settled into making the Astalos akin to drakes and wyverns, which led to the inclusion of both its dragon trait and electricity trait, since I discovered that drakes use their associated elemental traits. I thought that was supposed to be limited to creatures actually made of the element, but now that I think about it, I think of the pre-master red dragons had the fire trait, as did the other greater dragons. Getting into the meat of the matter, the Astalos is noted for being a swift and highly capable flyer. Given this and its slith appearance, the use of an extreme dexterity shouldn't be surprising. It will be the main attack stat of the Astalos, along with it helping it fly and flit through the air. Its strength is moderate, as it does pack a bit of a wallop in its blows, and it is generally just a big, fearsome dragon. Its wisdom is in between low and moderate, mainly because I was leaning a bit into this creature being a perceptive sort of beast. This of course lends to a high perception bonus, and is specifically inspired by a bit of the Astalos being based on insects and their compound eyes, even if the Astalos itself doesn't have them. Its remaining ability scores are low or lower, as it is less reliant on them and even a little fragile, especially compared to its fearsome fellows in the Fated 4. That leaves its skills, which are fairly simple. A high acrobatics will help the Astalos fly and maneuver in the air, while a moderate athletics is mainly just to use in those situations where it comes up, in which it can't use acrobatics instead. With that covered, we can start delving into the defenses of this dynamic drake. Swift and nimble as it is, it felt right for the Astalos to use an armor class that just edges out a high value, again playing into the insectoid features of this voltaic vandal. Counter to this, and based on its low constitution, is a low pool of hit points. In addition to that armor class, it has some innate protection in regards to its flight. It's a mostly melee monster, so this isn't a huge buff, but it always makes skirmishing swoops against parties without reactive strike, and that lends to me being a little bit more cautious with its health. As a creature of the thunder element within Monster Hunter, Astalos is understandably immune to electricity damage, but curiously has a weakness to cold damage, a weakness that heroes might not expect without them doing some recall knowledge checks. On the other hand, the critter's saving throws might be a bit more predictable. Following an extreme dexterity is an extreme reflex save, allowing the Astalos to flit to and fro in its dodging, while on the other end is a terrible fortitude save. I'll usually only use a terrible save when I also use an extreme save, or maybe when I have 2 different high saves. But I do like the symmetry of extreme to terrible saves with a moderate will save in between the 2 of them. Not because I think the Astalos is particularly willful, but mostly for balance purposes. The Astalos is a highly aggressive monster, which will become apparent as we start digging into its attacks. It has 3 strikes based on its most prominent attacks in-game: its horn, stinger, and wings. The first of these uses only a moderate attack bonus but deals high damage, lacking any other apparent effects or features aside from the finesse trait present on all of its attacks. Its stinger has a high attack bonus and the benefit of some considerable reach given its length, but in return only deals low damage. These numbers also match those of its wing strikes, which have the agile trait instead of reach to justify their lower damage bonus. This makes the strikes fairly simple at first glance, but as we'll see here shortly, there's more to it than meets the eye. First and foremost in the arsenal of this aerial assailant is Blitz, so named for it being a single action and move and strike, while also calling to mind the electric powers of our predator. This is pretty similar to Pounce, but it includes flight, and doesn't feature the hidden aspect of Pounce. I realize now that it might be unclear whether this means that the Astalos only strides at half speed for this ability, but that was not my intention. It can stride its full speed or fly up to half of its speed, and the reason behind that can be found in its next ability, Charge Up. This is a very central part of the Astalos' kit, and something you can see plenty of during gameplay, where the Astalos will charge up a part of its body with electricity it generates through motion, based on piezoelectricity. Fitting in this particular case, given the publisher of Pathfinder. In Monster Hunter, this electricity is channeled into the body parts that I happen to make into strikes, and so this causes a selected attack to deal additional electricity damage. Which is also why I was a little cautious with the damage I gave it. Activating this requires the Astalos to have been moving, whether that be 2 strikes or moving at least 30 feet. A deliberately chosen number so that the Astalos can trigger this off of a single use of Blitz. Since this is a free action to trigger this effect, the Astalos has 2 whole turns to take advantage of it, which can give it a round to make some strikes before moving into its other abilities. The first of which is Reaving Bolt, which the Astalos can only use while its horn is charged up. This resembles the blade of electricity that the Astalos can generate before slamming its head down, which I translated into a strike that hits in a 15-foot line. In addition to this increased range, it pumps up the damage of Charge Up, and then converts all the damage to electricity, resembling the blade of electricity it uses. Like many of the abilities following Charge Up, this then causes the Astalos to lose a charge of its horn. Rolling Thunder is another Charge Up ability that requires the Astalos' wings to be charged, and actually seeks to simulate 2 different attacks at once. Its Stomping Shockwave, where it slams its wing talons on the ground as it crawls around, and then its Swooping Shock, where it ascends from the sky before delivering a huge burst of electricity around it. As such, this lets the Astalos stride or fly twice, with different effects happening depending on which it chooses. Striding creates a former effect, dealing unlimited use area damage with a high reflex DC that each creature moves adjacent to. It's somewhat similar to a Nightmare's Gallop, though this also includes the opportunity to knock a creature prone. If the Astalos instead flies and lands on a surface, it creates a 30-foot emanation with the same damage and DC. One caveat I did add to this ability was that all this movement doesn't allow it to trigger its Charge Up because that just felt too strong, it could just continually do it. The last of the Astalos' Charge Up abilities is its Thundering Tail, which, surprise surprise, requires its tail to be charged. It's a very simple burst of electricity in a 15-foot emanation that deals in between limited and unlimited use area damage at a high DC. It uses this in-between damage since there doesn't necessarily have to be a cooldown. An Astalos could use Thundering Tail, then fly at least 30 feet to charge up on its next round, and swoop back in for another Thundering Tail in the following round. This is the case for most of these charged up abilities, which is again why I was cautious for their damage as well. The Astalos has 2 remaining abilities non-reliant on its charge up, even though they are both related to electricity. Dancing Thunder is my name for the Astalos' big ability and one that I initially struggled to figure out, as it creates bolts of lightning that dance around the battlefield. These bolts split over time, and the whole design perplexed me until I decided to start with 2 bolts that initially deal limited use area damage to 2 random creatures. At the start of the next turn, one of these bolts splits to deal in between limited and unlimited damage to 3 random creatures. Finally, after another round, another one of these bolts splits to target 4 random creatures with unlimited use area damage, after which the Astalos can't use this ability again for a bit. All of this electricity damage plays into the Astalos' Stunning Shocks, based on the standard effect of electricity in Monster Hunter. This can inflict stun if a player can't pass a moderate DC Fortitude save, the only instance of a save other than Reflex in his kit, which is half the reason I included it. Hate a monster that only ever targets a single save. It feels as though it has been a minute since I worked on some gear for a creature and not just because of the vacation. I really felt the desire to make a weapon this time. In particular, I was inspired by stuff like railguns, the burst skill of the Astalos' armor, and even a little bit of the Pokemon Vikavolt. Oh, and obviously the light bowguns of the Astalos. Based on burst, the main effect of this Fulgur firearm is to plant a short-lasting electricity weakness that it can exploit with its shocking rune. The consecutive hit idea of this skill is represented by needing a hit each round to extend this effect, which, given its reload trait, should mean that you aren't going to be able to easily spread it to a multitude of creatures. And then, while I think it already has a solid power base, I like the idea of just letting it unleash a lightning bolt. Just a fun little rip of electricity named for another of the Astalos' weapons. But that covers this bolt-reaving beastie. This vulgar-flinging fiend flies and flits around foes, firing fervent flurries in a frying fusillade until their food is fried or fleeing. The Astalos was a fun creature to test, though a couple of unlucky crits against me almost ended the test early. Being melee-oriented, it will often come into range of foes, but it could certainly be played as a darting skirmisher, dropping in with a blitz, making a strike or two, and then lifting back into the air. Obviously, this doesn't work as well against enemies with reactive strike, but in such circumstances, the Astalos has other powerful electrical abilities to rely upon. I gotta say, it is good to be back. I hope you all enjoyed this return to form. Let me know what you think, and what other creatures you'd like to see in a comment. You can check out the blog or Twitter linked below to see other versions of this creature, as well as some discussions on encounter hooks. Thanks for watching, and have a monstrous Monday.
The copious amounts of blood it sheds can never be matched.